I just want you to know that one, that this is a safe space, like for you guys who are listening, that two, like you're always going to be like welcomed by like us in the Relentless Runners community, whether you are just like a listener, you follow us on social media, you're an athlete of ours, and there is never going to be any judgment. And a lot of times, again, like we are our own worst critic when it comes to that.
Welcome back to the Relentless Runners podcast. I'm your co-host, Christine.
And I'm Toni.
And we are the co-founders of Relentless Runners, which is an online run coaching team that provides one-on-one run coaching with a team of over 10 coaches, a registered dietitian, a strength and conditioning coach, and a clinical psychologist who teaches our athletes all about mindset. And with this podcast, we really wanted to bring our running knowledge here to you so you can follow along, learn, and grow as a runner.
Woohoo! And before we get into our topic, which is listener inspired today, we're going to get into our Corral Chronicles. So, as always, without further ado, Christine, tell us about how your week has been going so far.
So it was good. I had a good long run over the weekend, and then so I just started up my local town's run club again. That is Sunday mornings. Mm-hmm. But we didn't have that this week just because of Father's Day. Oh, so right. I was a couple miles short because I was planning on that. So I was a couple miles short on my mileage because of that, like 3 miles short, nothing like crazy. But then I did a run Monday and Tuesday. And then today is Wednesday. Normally I always do my speed workouts. I'm getting my days all mixed up because the kids are off school today for Juneteenth. So I'm kind of right. like I don't know what day it is. Yeah. So I normally get up to do my run early, and my alarm, I started feeling like my throat started hurting yesterday. Oh no. And I was like, but I felt fine. Like I don't feel sick. It's my allergies. It happens every year despite how much I try to prevent it. But I could tell that
allergies bad too.
I do.
You really do.
Yeah, I do. It's been like that. Like I was that kid getting like 50 pricks in the back and like 50 pricks on the arm and 50 like to do all the testing for allergy testing. Like I was the asthma and the allergy kid, and I would get like I know. And I would get allergy shots like every 2 weeks. My little brother and I would go and we get our little allergy shots. So yeah. So I do have them, and I take stuff daily to try to prevent it, but it's inevitable. So anyways, I felt it getting scratchy yesterday. And then when I woke up at 4:15 to get ready to go do my speed workout, my throat was so swollen. Like I could barely swallow. Like it hurt so bad. And I was like, well, how am I going to breathe? I had 200s in 1Ks. I was like, how the heck am I going to breathe through that?
Especially with the weather this week, like it's already,
It was like 76 this morning and like 80% humidity, which like that would have been hard in itself, let alone, my throat being closed up. So I was like, all right, well, I'm just going to go back to bed then at this point. So I went back to bed. It feels better just because I've been like talking and drinking and whatnot, but it is still very tender and swollen. Yeah. I did my lift this morning.
That's good.
But still, I'm like, well, I'm going to try to do it tomorrow, but we'll see.
Yeah, Will got a throat virus. Like he got a virus last week.
Yeah, you thought he had strep, right?
Yeah, but it wasn't strep. I know they like tested something because she was like, strep only accounts for like a very small percentage of like the viruses that you can get in your throat, I guess. I don't know. But he got something, so he just finished his like pack. But
pack of like antibiotics
and then a steroid pack. Wow. But for him it was like it was very, very weird. But
did he have other symptoms? Like did he feel crappy, fever or anything?
He was really tired the first day. Throat wasn't bad, but whenever he gets sick, even when he's had COVID and stuff, his throat always like hurts really bad. I don't know if he got his tonsils out as a kid. So I think because of that, like I don't think he did. And because of that, that's always like a symptom that he gets when he's sick. But he had
Yeah.
like a little bit of body aches for a day or two that went away. But then the throat, then he felt better like physically, but the throat was so bad and it just wouldn't go away. So that's why he went to the doctor. But I felt so
Yeah.
bad because like when your throat hurts, and especially the level of like his, like he couldn't eat anything. Like even like applesauce that hurt because of the acid. Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was like running around trying to grocery shop for different things. I was
Get
like,
some
I
like
want to make you
Jello
stuff,
or
but like
pudding or something.
I literally got him pudding and then he
Yeah.
didn't eat it, so I ate it.
I love pudding.
Me too.
I love
Okay.
chocolate pudding.
Oh
Okay,
my God.
anyways.
Yes. Anyway, sorry.
So yeah, so we'll see how it feels tomorrow. If it is the same or not better, I might just run the distance and just not do the workout.
Yeah. Push the workouts to next week.
Yeah, because it's going to be that really heavy breathing that I'm like a little nervous about.
Totally.
So we'll see. And then I'll just, do it, whatever. But yeah, so
Yeah.
other than that, like, things are feeling good. Strength training now that
Good.
baseball's over. Strength training has been
Yay.
consistent back again this week. So I've been excited about that because that was like really frustrating. And like, so baseball ended last week. I have made a good dinner every night this week. I have been on top of all the nutrition. Like, and then last night, Bobby, so now that baseball's over, Bobby goes back and starts playing Tuesday nights for the slow pitch softball team. And he came home at like 5 from work and then he had to leave at 6. And dinner was ready at like 6:15. And he's like, well, is dinner going to be ready? I was like, I am not being rushed with dinner any longer.
No.
It is ready when it is ready. You might just have to eat when you get home from softball. I am sorry, but I am
so triggering for me.
Not
like,
exactly. I was like, I am not rushing this dinner right now. So back off. I am so sick of rushing to get dinner on the table so we can be somewhere. Make a bagel. So other than that, things have been good. So
I hope you feel better and you're able to get it done. But if not, next week
at least I just know it's allergies. Like no one else is sick or anything. I just know it's allergies because I don't have body aches or a fever or like.
That's good. Yeah.
I just know it's just my stupid allergies. So
yeah.
Oh well. Anyways,
stupid allergies,
right? Seriously.
So
how are you?
Okay, so I had my PT appointment last week with Lauren after we recorded, and things were just like feeling kind of garbagey all week last week. Like I just felt like I couldn't recover. Like I was, and I know that I said that last week too. So I was able to do my PT, and this is where it was interesting. Like I did all my PT exercises, which is like a strength workout at this point. And I'm fine doing it during. There's maybe like one exercise where I would notice something a little bit, but like that's fine and that's normal and to be expected when you're doing PT, right? So everything was fine. And then when I like later on in the day, like I noticed actually later on the day it was fine. I woke up the next day and it was achy again from PT, which I'm like, okay. But I didn't do a run that day because it was achy. I was like, well, I'm not gonna like do it because when I notice that it feels a certain way, like it doesn't feel good if I go out for a run. So I just like waited, and then Will and I went to just like practice putting and chipping Friday night, and then Saturday morning I like woke up, noticed it a little bit. One of my athletes was hosting like her first run club. She's like a Nike ambassador for Pittsburgh, which I know I told you about this, but like, so it was her first like run club that she was doing, like hosting it, something that they're going to be doing monthly. It's called the Her Pace like run club. And so it's like a lot of females that are there and anyone can come, but I was like so excited and wanted to be there to support her. So I was like, whatever, like I'm going to go, like maybe I'm overthinking this and I'm just too hyper aware. So I thought that like it was right here, like where I live is where they were starting, like to go on the path. So I was like, all right, I'm going to like go. I already told her I would stay with the back of the groups, and she's like speedy. So I knew she would be leading it. So I was like, I'll stay with whoever's in the back, whether they're running, walking, whatever. So we did 3 miles. The girls that I was running with were doing run walk, which was like great. Everyone was so nice and it was so fun, but my ankle didn't feel great like during. And it was fine. Like I was going significantly slower than what I normally do, like probably 2 minutes slower than my easy pace. So I was like, whatever, I'll be fine. So after that, and then after Sunday, I was like, I need to just like reset everything, because what I've been struggling with is like, I feel like I'm trying to navigate, and even like my coach Carly can't even like really help with this because it just depends on how I feel. But like I'm trying to navigate like, okay, so it gets achy after like PT, but I don't like to do my run on the same day as PT because that's going to be too much in one day. But then the day after it's achy, so I can't run then. And then I'm trying to manage like Will and I are just like chipping and putting, which is like doesn't aggravate things, but like there's almost like something every day, and I'm just trying to figure it out. And it was honestly just so stressful that I was like, I just need like a reset. Like mentally, I need to give myself a week to just like not think about it. And then also I think I just need to give a week just to like get everything to calm back down, because me trying to navigate everything just like isn't working and it's not feeling better. And when I talked to Lauren, like this past week, probably like last week was the worst, like close to like where it was when everything started. So when I talked to Lauren, I was like, what do I do about running? She's like, you really just need to like feel it out. Like it's almost like I know what to do and I know what I need. But she can't give me like specific guidance, because it really depends on like what I'm noticing. So I was like, okay, like I'm just going to chill for the week. And it's Wednesday right now when we're recording this. I have been not running since Sunday. Sunday was my first day off, and like things are calming down. I'm now not noticing it, just like walking around doing different things. And so I know that it'll be good just to like reset and then go from there. And I actually canceled my PT appointment on Tuesday because I didn't even want Lauren to get in there to like manually work on stuff, because I just didn't want any like poking, prodding, just like let everything relax a little bit. So I will see her tomorrow. Like I kept that appointment. And then I think that'll be good just to basically just focus on PT this week, and then go from there. So yeah. So again, I think that I was struggling. Like I've really been struggling mentally with everything. I think because, and my one friend encouraged me. Whoa, there's a truck going by and honking.
Got a lot of vehicle
Oh yeah,
interruptions.
last week. Yeah, last week was crazy too. But like if I'm being totally honest, like I'm not emotional about it, which is good. Oh my God. We're going to wait for another 30 seconds for this to go by. I think it's gone. But I've really been struggling. My one friend, Karina, I was talking to her a little bit about things because she was just like asking how I've been doing with everything. And she kind of gave me the nudge to like schedule a therapy appointment, just because I was like, it's just like affecting my day-to-day like mood, from not being able to run. And then also there's like that component, which is not new news, but then also like from being like constantly feeling like I'm being beat down, like with having to deal with something over the last like several years. Like this isn't a new concept, and I just think that I've had to navigate being resilient like too much, and it's starting to like weigh on me, where I am at a point where I'm like, I don't have energy to like go through this again. Just from I say that from a place of like, I'm like so sick of it. I'm just so tired. Like I don't have that fire to like come back stronger. And like I talked about like how it's been hard, and I know people say this from a loving place. So but like when people say that, I'm like, yo, I tried that like for the last like 5 years. Like I tried that like before. I tried that after ankle surgery, and like
you did come back stronger.
And I did come back stronger. Yeah. Absolutely. Like I did do that. And it's like, but I'm just tired of doing that. Like I'm tired of that like narrative. I'm like not fired up about like the comeback. I'm like, fuck the comeback. I'm like done with this. Like I'm so sick of it. So yeah, it's just been like really hard on me, and I just have noticing it with my day-to-day mood. And I think I'm just kind of like in this place of feeling really defeated. And I understand that like none of this lasts forever. Like I know all of those things, like all of those cliche things. Like I understand that. And I'm trying to also give myself grace and like be able to sit in this place of like, and it sucks that you're going through this again. And it's okay that you're just like pissed off and angry and frustrated, and you just want to be able to go out and like run and train and like get back to doing what you're doing. And so I scheduled this was yesterday. So after she was giving me like a little nudge of like, I think you need to like talk to somebody about it. I was like, okay. So I scheduled my appointment with my therapist, because something for me too, and you know this about me, and I've like touched on it briefly, but I've gone to therapy for like trauma. So like when it comes to like in my thought process, I was like, okay, well, I've gone to therapy for some like dark shit. So like I should be fine. Like, this is literally about running. That's stupid. Like, that's such a surface level thing. Like, it's not a big deal. Like, I can navigate this like on my own without therapy. And I think just like giving myself grace to realize that like, no, you're struggling with this. This is something that's kind of consuming a lot of your like mental energy right now. And you're having a hard time navigating it, and just like talk to somebody about it. So I was able to get in today. So I have that like after our podcast recording. And I think that that'll just be really helpful to like do a little brain dump about like how I'm feeling, and like get some guidance on just like how to navigate it. And like, I'm very much someone that is just so like I'm like solution focused. And I saw this like holistic doctor a week ago, and I followed up and emailed him because I was like noticing stuff. I was having a really shitty week last week, and he was like, you need to stop. What did he say? You need to stop. Well, he's the one who told me the whole like let the paint dry concept.
Oh, yeah.
So he was like, you need to like let the paint dry. And that kind of prompted me to really take like the week off too, where I was like, I just need to get things to chill. Like, focus on PT, let PT work at like what I need to build strength up with and all that stuff. And then he was like, he listed out numbers. And then he's like, stop trying to control everything. Because I was like, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. He's like, stop trying to control everything. I'm like, oh, but what else do I do? I can't just sit here. But that's like the hard part, and something that I've worked in therapy with other areas of my life where I have a very hard time just like being in the place, like being in this gray zone and this gray area, and just being comfortable with that. Like, I like to fix things to a fault, if I'm being honest. And so just kind of sitting here in this place of like in between, or if it's a little uncomfortable, like, but like learning to do that. So I'm trying to channel that energy, but Dr. Dean will hear all about it later. So yeah, I think like because of that, I'm actually oddly in a very good mood today, where I'm like, you know what, like stuff that I'm going to focus on this week. And I shared this like on my social media post yesterday, but it's like, okay, what are positive things that I can focus on this week that like feel good? Like, and Will actually gave me this idea. I think it was Monday. He was like, let's plan to like do things like if you want to go to the movies, if you want to just putt, like because chipping may bother things, so like we could just go like do putting or just like anything, like let me know. I was like, okay. So that was like a really helpful. He's like such a good support system, and he's been like checking in on me and stuff too. And then the other thing that I was like, okay, Annette, so my friend who I run with around here, she texted me because her hamstring is flared up, and she's like, oh, no. Hey, my hamstring's flared up, so I'm not running this week either. Do you want to go for coffee this week? So we're going to coffee on Friday. Yeah. And like, I'm going to get my nails done this week. And so I'm trying to do these little things. And even I was telling you, right before we got on, is like I'm cleaning up like my desk space where I'm like wiping things down, keeping busy, like keeping busy with like positive things that like trying to like create, like have my environment feel good too. And then also from like a food perspective, I always find it helpful to have little goals where it's like, okay, focus on my protein intake, because that's something that can help with like recovery. And then fiber, I'm like terrible at. Like I eat my veggies, but I don't like eat enough of like stuff with fiber in my diet. But we learned from Christy a while ago on our last like call with her, like how fiber helps you absorb like nutrients. It's not just like benefits from a perspective of like your bowel movements, but it helps you absorb the nutrients of like the food you're eating when you're supplementing, like all of that stuff. So I was like, all right, I'll focus on fiber intake. And so I think just having those little goals for myself this week have really helped too. So yeah. So I'm just trying to like focus on what I control in like a relaxed way and not like and just kind of like letting go a little bit, I guess, of the situation. Cause there's only so much I can do right now.
And you're doing all the right things. It's not like you're slacking in your PT or you're, not being smart about like running, or, like you're doing all the right things. So it's not like there's even anything left to do in that sense, So I'm really glad to hear that. One, you have a therapy session today. I think that'll be great to just like get those thoughts out to the person who really knows you really well on like such a deep level. And then being able to get some hopefully actionable insights from her to like move forward. And then it's funny how your doctor said stop trying to control everything, because that was like when I went last week to my doctor's appointment to just like have my checkup and everything. And he's like, would you consider yourself a perfectionist?
No.
No. Even I literally said to him, I wouldn't necessarily say that, but maybe one step down from a perfectionist. So like, oh God.
Yeah. It's
Yeah, we're cut from
hard.
the same cloth.
Oh God, yeah. That's why we get along so well. But
I know.
yeah, it's hard. It's definitely, yeah, it's hard. But yeah, so
Yeah.
plugging
Oh,
away. But yeah, I think that'll be good and to
okay.
get some clarity on stuff today.
Yeah.
But
I like that you're staying busy and you're finding ways to just use your time and keep your mind off of things and like refresh not just
mhm.
physically but mentally and emotionally as well. So,
Yeah, and that stuff puts me in a
yeah.
good mood, like, when I see
Sure.
friends or, like, when,
Yeah.
when you, like, clean a place, it's like that feels good,
Oh
like,
yeah.
when I have, like, a
Satisfactory.
good meal, whether it's, like, I have a good meal or I treat myself to something, like,
Mhm.
I'll probably treat myself to, like, a nice coffee after this, like, just,
Yeah.
like, do little things that, like, help, like and yesterday I sat outside, it's hot as balls,
Yeah.
but I found a chair under a tree. We have, like, a nice little backyard area, and I just, like, sat outside for an hour just to catch up on like text messages to my friends and like just sit
Yeah.
there and relax. And that was actually
Good.
really nice too. So yeah, but hopefully we have some better updates next week when we have our podcast
Yeah.
episode, but still things are trending. I just yeah, if I work on myself like inside, I know that that's going to translate to, and that's woo woo, but
Yeah.
I
I
know if
believe
I
that
like work
though.
on
No, I
myself,
believe it.
it like translates
Yeah.
to the physical. So I'm
Yeah.
definitely like trying to like lean into that. So,
Yeah. I totally agree with that.
yeah, but
Yeah.
guys, today's topic, we're excited to talk about this one. Like I said before, it was listener inspired. So we always love hearing your ideas, by the way. If there's ever anything that's on your mind that you want us to speak to or like educate you on, or just, we'll give you our unfiltered thoughts, you could always DM us on our Relentless Runners Instagram. You can also, we have a little like box on Spotify that you can drop like any notes in there too after the episode. So if you have ideas, you can put it in there. You can email us. But we really do this for you, our community. And even if you're not one of our athletes, you are absolutely a part of our Relentless Runners community. So for today's topic, we're going to talk about self-comparison, which is something I can confidently say that all of us have navigated at some point in our running journey. So like whether that's like the comparison trap with yourself, comparison with your paces to other people, comparing your training to others, comparing your body to others, which is a big thing on social media. And even like what you see that like people have when it comes to like clothes, shoes, all that stuff compared to like what you have. So our goal for today is really to just like pump your tires a little bit and build up your self-confidence, let you know that you're not alone in like if you're experiencing these thoughts, feelings, and emotions, and also just share a couple little tips, like things that Christina and myself have done to like navigate this stuff ourselves, or things that have helped, our athletes to, frame things in a certain way in our minds. So yeah, we really just want to help you guys navigate these emotions that you may be experiencing. But let's get to it. So we're going to break this down. The first thing that we're going to talk about is comparison trap with yourself. So, Christine, a question I have for you, and we'll kind of do this like as we approach like each category of just like personal experience that we've, dealt with ourselves, or maybe things that we've navigated, we've supported our athletes in navigating. So, off the top of your head, Christine, like, do you have a past or current experience navigating like your like comparison to yourself?
Of course I do. um, so I think I feel like nobody can say like I never compare myself to literally anything or anybody. I think that they'd be lying to themselves if they
Yeah.
did say that to some extent. I do think there's different levels of it clearly, where some can be very detrimental to your mental health and some can be just like little things, but I think that we all do it. So if we're going to be truly honest with ourselves and each other, there's definitely more, I would say, looking at my timeline of life, there's more instances that I've compared myself to the more detrimental way in my past self than my current self, because it took me a long time to realize how detrimental it was. And I wouldn't even realize I was doing it a lot of the times. Like, I wouldn't realize that I was comparing myself, because it's not like you sit here and you scroll through social media, which is typically where all those things occur nowadays.
Yeah.
And you see something, you're like, wow, I'm going to compare myself to this person, blah, blah, blah. And then you point out everything. Like, it can be so subtle and so almost subconscious that you don't even realize it. And so then I've learned a lot about myself, I would say in the last decade, about, especially as with us being on social media so much, like our
Sure.
job is on social media. So it can be hard to kind of separate yourself from that a lot. And so I certainly have, but I would say for true examples, I would say one could be with my pregnancy running journeys, more so with my first and second than my third. I was very, very confident in what I was doing and who I was, and more so in my third one, but especially my first one. So that was 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And I didn't really know much about pregnancy or running through pregnancy, let alone. And it's back then, even, I feel like this like makes you sound really old, but it's kind of crazy just how fast social media evolves.
Sure.
But
yeah, it's crazy.
even 7+ years ago, I guess 8 years ago, there weren't a ton of pregnant runners posting their journeys on social media. And so when I would see some, I fell into that comparison trap there of like, I need to be running more. I need to be trying to hit 1,000 pregnancy miles, or because like all these numbers were thrown out there from people, or I need to be doing like all these I need to do a marathon during my pregnancy because all these other girls are doing it. And I felt it started to make me feel like I wasn't as badass of a runner because I wasn't running while pregnant, which is total BS, obviously. So,
Yeah.
but that definitely was a pure example of that. And then I don't know really where the shift happened. I think I just got more confident in who I was over the years. And I've done a lot of like self internal work on that sort of thing. But I would say during my second pregnancy is really where I gained a lot of my confidence throughout my pregnancies. And that's where Bump Runner started. And that's where it all evolved into that. And then my third pregnancy, I was very confident in all of that. And I didn't really fall into the comparison trap during that time.
What's cool too is during that time, the priority was strength. And like you shifted a little bit, even though you still like ran a little, you know, here and there, but like your priority was like different in that pregnancy where you were loving like CrossFit and stuff. And so I think that's cool that you were able to like
let go of it a little bit and still be confident. Yeah, like I was still really confident as a runner. Like I was still running while pregnant, but yeah, it wasn't like with my second one, I was like, I did a half marathon in my third trimester, and I felt like I had to like do all these big goals, which were great. Like I don't regret a single thing, but there was still that like I need to prove myself to. I don't know if I needed to prove myself to others or to myself. I don't know, but regardless, like when I let all that go, like my third pregnancy was by far my most enjoyable. And it wasn't because I wasn't running as much. It was just because I was just confident in who I was and I didn't need to prove anything to anybody. So that I think was big game changer. And then I would say like another example of comparison, and I catch myself doing this like to this day, is motherhood stuff. So on social media, you know, I follow mom accounts who teach their kids things, or they show their cleaning routine, or they show their daily routine and what they do. And like, I think sometimes I've got my shit together here as a mom. Like I teach my kids. I don't, you know, I really do activities. I teach them. I help them. I keep as clean of a house as I can with 3 kids and a German Shepherd. But it's like when I see some of those things on there, I'm like, oh, well, I should be cleaning more, or I need to maybe try this routine, or like they're putting me to shame in that. And it's like, well, no. And I really have to remind myself, like, I'm doing a good job. It does not have to be perfect, and it doesn't have to be like anybody else. It's just what works for me and my family. And so like, if I'm being totally transparent, like that's an ongoing one that I have to like, I have to check myself. And what I've realized, I was just having this conversation, I think, with my sister the other day of where I've set my standard of perhaps what my house should look like. And my sister flat out asked me like, well, where are you getting that standard from? And I said, well, I suppose what I see on social media when I see some of these moms post like their closing down routine, as they'll tell them, and then they make their house spotless at night before going to bed. And I'm like,
I've seen those.
Yeah, and it's like, that's great. I would love that, but I try to do that. I can't do it every night. And then I feel like I'm a failure because I'm not doing that. And she's like, well, you got to change that standard. Like, who says you have to do that? And it's like, and I don't even realize, because again, back to what I said in the very beginning, it's not like I look at that reel and I'm like, wow, my house, I need to do this because my house is not the same and blah, blah, blah. It's truly like so mindless when you're ingesting this stuff. It's like, oh, I like that idea. Okay, cool. And then I try to implement it. And if it doesn't work, then I feel like I've failed because I've set that standard. And so it's like, it can be very subtle when you're talking about, do you compare yourself to somebody it could be very subtle that you're doing it and you don't even realizing it just by mindlessly scrolling. And if your feed is curated with, let's use the example of a perfect house as a mom.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there's such a thing, but social media makes it look like it's true.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
say like that's your entire feed and you're constantly ingesting these perfect aesthetic, all the no bright colors, but all the like, soft pastel color aesthetic looking, right? Or all the Montessori stuff. And then you are ingesting that as that's what it should look like. And then it's not your reality. Then all of a sudden you feel like you're not like showing up as what you've found that is what you should be doing. And then you
Yeah.
start to feel less than. And it's like, it's just very subtle how that kind of stuff can happen. And so what you
I
ingest
agree.
really matters. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I know we're going to get to like tips and things like that later. So I won't jump ahead, but I would say that those are kind of like
The two
one's
things you can.
past that I'm over and then kind of an ongoing one that I do. What about you?
Yes. So when it comes to comparison trap with like myself, like against myself, I would say um past, which this was still only a few years ago. But when I got my ankle surgery, I really struggled with like my pace, and I was starting with running again. Because I took like 5 months off from running, I think it was in total. So when I was starting, I was like starting from scratch, like
Mm-hmm.
literally. And so the paces I was running was like significantly slower than obviously like what I have done before. And so for me, like I would have a lot of thoughts of like, and I eventually got over this, but I had a lot of thoughts of like, I'm never going to get back there. Like I'm never going to get back to doing what I was doing before. And I struggled a lot with like just again like my own like paces and like wondering like if I'm ever going to be able to handle like doing like training again. Am I going to be able to run a marathon again? And so I would look at like past workouts, and I wouldn't, it's interesting, like over time I would like get motivated by that, but like I initially was like more stressed about it of like, dang, like I used to do that. Like I went into my old like Strava, because I don't have my old like logs from like, I've had so many watches over the years, but like I was looking at my old stuff from Strava, and I was able to see like old workouts that I did. I just like went down a rabbit hole one day, and I normally don't do this, but I did that one day. And I remember looking at some sort of track workout when I was building for at that time it was like the last marathon that I had ran, and I was like, dang, like that's like I'm way, I knew that I was like further away, and it just made me feel even like further. So I was kind of I don't know if you would call that self-sabotaging, but like I was putting myself in like a really bad mood from like comparing myself to my former self, like in that situation. And then more recently, something that I've been navigating with like in terms of it, like injury actually, is comparing myself to others who are just like consistently like able to string together like healthy training cycles all the time. And so it just kind of, again, like stuff that you're consuming that you don't even realize is happening, but like it'll just be like in passing of like, oh shit, that's awesome. Like they, for example, like they PR'd, and like I remember a year ago they had PR'd that distance like a year ago. That's cool to see that they're making progress. And then I sometimes go down this like thought process of like, dang, like I wonder what would have happened like if I was able to string together like healthy training cycles of like
Mm-hmm.
where I would be now. So I struggle with that sometimes, and I try to bring myself back to like, which we'll get to tips and everything too, but like embracing a couple tips that have been helpful, like even when I'm dealing with current things. I don't know if these things have helped you too, Christine, but like embracing where you are now and embracing the season that you're in, it can be really important if this is something that you struggle with. Also, like if you have goals to get faster, um, and like let's say you're in a similar situation that I was after my ankle surgery, where it's like I've done like I had accomplished really awesome things that I was so proud of in my running, and like I really wanted to like get back there. I wanted to get faster again. Training where your fitness is at instead of where you want it to be is huge, and that actually quickens the process compared to like overreaching and like forcing yourself to hit certain paces in your day-to-day easy runs or in all your workouts. Like it's going to build a lot more rapidly when you, again, just like train where you're at. And then the other thing I wrote down was just keeping an open mind and like reminding yourself that it's possible to like get back there and then some. Again, like if your goal is to get faster or like yeah, you're coming back from something. And then what was the last thing that I had to? Oh, just again, something that I had to remind myself with my own situation is just that like it's not failure if like what has worked in the past with your training doesn't work for you now. So again, like that's more specific to like comparing your current self to your past self. So like let's say that even if you're older now, like you're thinking back to like 5 years ago, like maybe you're able to train like higher volume, do more intensity in your training. And now like you're realizing that your body isn't responding well to that and you have to change gears a little bit. Or again, like life circumstances are different for whatever reason. Like maybe you're now a parent and like you don't have time to be able to like do again, volume as an example, but like run as much mileage or train for like a certain distance because the time isn't like right at the moment. Like it doesn't mean that you're a failure because you have to like pivot a little bit or you can't make it work like in that time. Just again, like it's just like part of the season that you're in and you work with what you have. And again, like presence is like huge when it comes to this, I think. So
Yeah, those are great. I really like those.
yeah.
And I think they're all really important to remember, whether you're struggling or not. Like, those are good things
Mm-hmm.
to remember, good things to keep in mind. So, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
no, thanks for sharing that and being
Yeah.
like open and raw about your past and the thoughts that you would have, and then things that have
Sure.
helped you. So,
Same with you.
Hmm.
You're amazing. Okay. Let's go into tell us what our next section's gonna be.
So the next one we have written down is comparison of your pace to others. I know that you just kind of talked about your pace comparing to yourself
Mm-hmm.
a little bit. So if we're talking about comparing your pace to others, I think this is like a huge one that
Yeah.
runners face right now. Like, with all the
Yep.
athletes that we work with, I'd say this is probably the number one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard because everyone shares on social media, which is fine. I think it's deeper than us just saying don't compare, right? I think it's a deeper conversation of just being mindful of what you ingest and then being able to have a filter on what you see on social media. I know you've
Mm-hmm.
heard it said before, Instagram is a highlight reel. We all know that at this point. I hope you know that anyway, that it's a highlight reel and people share their best. Some people share their worst, which is great, but the majority are just putting what's good, what looks good for them out there. And so you have to remember that and look at it with a filter of, there might be days that they're struggling or their paces are much slower than what they share, but they're just not putting it out there. And that their paces don't mean literally a single thing to what your running and your life looks like. So
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to perhaps an example that I may have of past or current experiences with pace comparison, I would say a lot. I'm going to use my pregnancy example again. I was really, really good about letting go of pace when I was pregnant and running, because you're pregnant and you're running. Like, feel like I shouldn't have to say more than that, but I'm human. And there would be times when I would see another pregnant woman who had comparable paces to me prior to being pregnant, right? Like, we were kind of on the same fitness level and we're both pregnant or whatever. And their paces were maybe faster than mine. And that would be frustrating to me because it would be like, well, how come they're running faster? Like, we were at the same fitness level for the most part, like, so like
Mm-hmm.
I would catch myself sometimes then trying to remind myself that like maybe they just like went mad hard that day. Like,
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
they just went way harder than they should have. And I
Mm-hmm.
was very, very good about really keeping my effort down when I was pregnant and running. And maybe that person just shared that day. And that's
Mm-hmm.
not the norm. Or maybe they were in like zone
Yeah.
4 the whole time. Like, who knows? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I would try to like bring myself back to that. When it comes to like current pace comparison, I would say I will say I try to do a really good job of filtering that out nowadays,
Mm-hmm.
because I understand,
Yeah.
I have more knowledge about what pace really even means through training.
Sure.
And really what matters is what you can do on race day. It's not about what you can do on a random Tuesday and
Yeah.
like that's not important. And so
Mm-hmm.
I've been able to filter that out to be like, okay, cool. Well, let's show up on race day and see what we can do on race day.
Exactly.
Like, what are you made of on
Yeah.
race day? Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, I have run like my easy pace is, I don't know. It's hard because you see people who run their everyday pace is their half marathon pace, and I know many examples right now that I'm thinking of, and my half marathon time is 20 minutes faster than them, but my easy pace is slower than theirs. And it's like, I understand how it works now, and so once I had that layer of knowledge, I was able to just forget about pace, and I don't care what people post. I kind of got away from even posting my own stuff. Like every now and then I'll post like a watch picture for just like, I don't know, content purposes, but it's not like anything more than that. And I think it's just the knowledge is kind of like, knowledge is power. It's just like
so true.
That.
Where I think that we can kind of, to put it bluntly, like you can kind of read through the bullshit at this point too, with how long we've been coaches and how long we've worked with other people. When you see people and you can kind of get the sense that they're trying to, again, not just like share, like I ran this today, and they're kind of trying to be flashy, about it. I think you can kind of see right through it that as coaches, we just genuinely have an understanding of like where someone's at and like what they should be doing. That's why social media is hard for me sometimes, because I want to give unsolicited advice all the time and I can't.
I know. But I just roll my eyes and go past. And I feel like every time I see something like that of like, oh, I'm running my easy run at
marathon pace.
I'm just going to give an example, like 7:30, right? Like that's for most people, unless you're an elite, like that's not an easy pace. Like we all know this by now.
James, so I saw James last night, and I told you this, but told you that I saw him, but I saw him last night. James is one of our other coaches, and he works in marketing for P3R, which is one of the sponsors for the Pittsburgh, like the big races that are going on in Pittsburgh. So we did like a little shoot with like a couple runners for like the race gear, and we were all just like hanging out. And a couple of the people that were there as well are like runners, and they were just asking questions about like the one is newer to runner. Newer to like distance running. He used to be a sprinter, I think, in college. And he's like, God, like, I just feel like I'm going to die on like all these runs. And then James was like, I'm only going to like sound like I'm bragging, but it's going to be to give you some context. And he was like, when I ran a 2:19 marathon, he was like, that was at, I think he said like a 5:15 pace. My easy runs are anywhere between 6:45, 7:30s. Like it ranges, and that's like several minutes slower than what my goal marathon pace is. And their eyes were like, whoa. So again, like Christine said, like unless you're on that
2:19 marathoner. Yeah.
Like when I saw James, like he was like when we met, I was in the middle of a workout doing like threshold intervals at 7 and like 7-minute pace. And James is like,
he's just like
bopping along on the path. And I was like, I'm sorry. Like, I'm like out of breath. Like, I'm so sorry. I'm in the middle of the workout because I was like creeping up on him and I didn't want him to think I was trying to like beat him, And I was like, I'm like in the middle of workout, and he's like not breathing heavy. He's like, I'll do it with you. I'm like, okay. But yeah, that's like truly his easy pace. And he's a 2:19 marathoner. So yeah, I completely agree with you. I think that it's hard. Like I don't struggle with that either now.
Yeah.
At all.
Because
Yeah, because I know. And back then I used to. Like back then, I did like think I think like if I'm trying to think of an example, I remember when I was even training for my last marathon, like not my last marathon, because that was last year, but back in 2017, I was trying to qualify for Boston at the time. And I remember I was like so hyper focused on numbers. So I was paying attention, like other people that I followed on social media at the time, I was hyper focused on like what they were running. And like if their paces were like trending faster than mine for just like easy runs, I would kind of like get down on myself a little bit of like, ooh, does this mean like if they're chasing the same goal as me, does that mean that I'm not like ready for that? And I would kind of get in my head a little bit. But yeah, it's a very real thing. And back to what you're saying before, it's something that like a lot of people that we work with like struggle like with that, with a couple of the things that we're gonna mention next too. But
so
but
here's
what are some tips?
Yeah, let's talk about some tips. So when it comes to tips, so say you're this person that we're talking about where you're really struggling with comparing your pace to other people's paces, and it's starting to get down, you're getting down on yourself, or you're getting frustrated or whatever. Some tips that you could do are to mute the accounts that you're finding yourself comparing yourself to. If you open up Instagram, and again, we're coming back to social media because that's where a lot of this is being ingested. But say every time you open the Instagram app, your feed, you see a handful of people that like to post their paces, and rightfully so. Like, again, they can do whatever they want, but say they post it, whether it's a highlight reel or not, it doesn't matter. If you are comparing yourself to that person and you're finding yourself having this feeling like after you've seen their post, this feeling of just like inadequacy or whatever it may be, then mute them. You don't have to unfollow them. You can mute them. For anyone who doesn't know, you don't have to unfollow a person if you want to continue following them, but you don't want to see their stuff in your feed anymore. You can go to their account and choose to do that, just to kind of give yourself a mental break from it. And I also encourage you to, I've had to tell some of my athletes this before, but you could also hide your Strava account and your Garmin account. So I do that for privacy purposes, not for comparison purposes, but for privacy location purposes. But I've told athletes before, they have friends on there and they're always posting everything. And if you are finding yourself comparing your training stats to someone else's training stats, even on Strava, then hide your profile or don't open the app. Oh my God.
Just delete it off your phone.
Can people do that? I don't know.
Yeah.
If they're
controversy.
Yeah, right. Don't open the app, delete it from your phone. Like, just because it's not logged on Strava doesn't mean you didn't do it, kind of thing. But removing the point of all of these tips is to remove what is causing you to stumble in a way, right? So don't share your paces on social media, mute the accounts that you're finding yourself comparing yourself to, and get off of all the tracking things like Garmin or Strava or whatever it is that you're doing. Not permanently. Hopefully you're able to kind of come full circle where you're like, okay, I can ingest this type of stuff and not let it hinder me or my mental state or my training. Kind of like how you're at that place now where you used to do that and now you can see all that stuff and whatever, like you're fine. It doesn't affect you anymore. Yep. But if that is happening to you, then you need to remove what is causing you to stumble so you can work on yourself and you can gain that confidence in your own training before you can start to reintroduce that sort of stuff again.
It's crazy how, like, because I've muted people on social media for other reasons too. It's a great tool, honestly, when you need to do that when it comes to like anything. But it is crazy how, like, when that's like, when you don't see it, how much
out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah. It really is. Yeah. And not in a way that it's like you're ignoring like what you're struggling with.
Right.
Like maybe you are. And if you are, like, again, like talk to somebody, but like, sometimes it's just like removing, I don't want to say toxic because I'm not saying those people are being toxic, but like what feels toxic to you and like how you're processing it. So,
right. And I think that's a good point that you just made though, is that you're not ignoring the situation by muting these accounts or hiding your account. It's because there's two sides of it where, yeah, let's remove what you're stumbling with, but then we also need to work on yourself at the same time. So that way you can reintroduce that and not be like in a bubble or something for the rest of your life. Like you need to do some self-reflection and think about like, okay, gain your confidence in your training, have a good cycle, realize that in like do those inner workings again. That might be talking to somebody or like having a coach that can kind of guide you through some of that self-confidence building before you kind of bring all that stuff back. Yeah. But that's a good point. It's not that you're just removing it to ignore the problem because that's not what we're doing here.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other stuff before we move on?
No, I don't think so.
All right. Well, on to the next thing. We're going to talk about comparing your training to others. So again, I think that this is like, it is equivalent in terms of like, these two are the top two things when it comes to comparing your paces and comparing your training to others. I have experienced that personally, but honestly, it's not on like a deep level. It's more been like a curiosity, like, and I've always been this way. It's always been a place of curiosity on like, oh, like I wonder if I did this, like how it would work for me type thing. But I've seen it heavily when it comes to being a coach and coaching my athletes. And like in particular, I think of an athlete that I started working with at the very end of last year, leading up to a spring marathon. And a lot of people are running the same marathon. And so people are constantly changing. Like when you're running a world major, it's like everybody has an idea on like where people are at in their training. And so, some of the people that I know like is friends with and like follows on social media, would see that have like maybe similar time goals as her, she would see that they're like doing so much. Like the volume that they're doing was crazy, like crazy high, and not where it needs to be for someone who is like training for, that like what she was going for. Like the intensity was like insane. And she would tell me like what she would be struggling with and we would talk through it. But she was always like, hey, she would just ask. And after she asked these types of questions at the beginning, I opened up that conversation of like, when you're when you see this kind of stuff and you start to have those processes of like, or thought processes of is what I'm doing enough? Like, I want you to text me so we can talk through it. Because for her, she was someone that it was helpful for me to explain the why behind things and how, like, where we were at in her training and what we were building towards. Like, that always would put her mind at ease. So we opened up that conversation. And again, that's where a coach can be great if you're someone who struggles with this. So she would text me and be like, hey, my friend is training for either the same race or a race around the same time. Well, I see her doing this type of like, it was always like where her long run was at and like the overall volume. And she was still running like higher volume. Like she peaked at like 65 miles, like maybe closer to 70, like in her training. But she saw people doing more, like peaking at 80s. And she was like, am I doing enough? Like with my long run, like, is it okay that I'm like running this distance, like for my long run? And then even as we got to taper, I wanted her to do a 3-week taper. And like that first week, like of taper, like, or even the weekend before the goal race, like those people that were running even higher volume than her, she was like, well, they're doing like a 16-mile long run the week before like the race. Like, is it okay? Oh yeah, I know. I was like, girl, for rest, like peace of mind, like in case this helps too. So she was training for like a 3:15 and faster than me. But she was training for a 3:15, based on like her life and like what she had on her plate and everything. We scaled down her volume compared to like what she had done in the past. She was still doing workouts and stuff like that. But some of the friends that she had, and like there's a certain coach that some of these people do work with, where it's like he trains them at a very high volume for like similar fitness levels. And one coach, like when she was full transparency, like talking about working with us or like working, with someone else, a question that she asked me after we had our initial like, discovery call, she was like, I talked to somebody else and like they said for where my fitness is at, I need to be running like 80-mile weeks. Like, is that a real thing? And I was like, no, absolutely not. Because she was stressed because of the workload that she had and she didn't know if she could make it work. And I was like, absolutely not. And that was my whole goal for her, is to see that you can do things differently and still like than these other people and still accomplish like the same goal or even more. And she did amazing in her training. And the race that she did was like hot as shit, but she was within like a minute of her PR. And if it was a nice day, she would have absolutely like reached our A goal for the day. So yeah, I think that just like, I'll let you explain like your own experiences that you've navigated as an athlete or with your athletes, but it's something that you see. Oh, hey, Maverick. Okay, so to transition into a couple tips that can be helpful, again, if you're someone who struggles with this, is just reminding yourself, like I said earlier, that there's so many ways to get from point A to point B. I know Christine can attest to this too, that we've worked and coached so many people to the same goal in completely different ways. So just reminding yourself, and this is like the next thing I want you to think about too, is that your training has to factor in things like how your body is responding to the training itself, your life circumstances, your stress levels, what allows you to continue to be consistent. Like what you have time for may be different than what somebody else has time for as well. And so I think that when you have that lens, it helps you have more of an understanding and can give you some confidence that like, just to kind of keep your blinders on and keep staying the course. But again, it's hard, but as coaches, we just want to say this again, like you can have the same goal as somebody else and train completely differently in order to get there.
Absolutely. For sure. Yeah. I feel like I can't even add anything else to that because it's so good and it's so true. And, because we coach so many people, we see this all the time.
Yeah.
And, we're constantly kind of reminding our athletes that there's more than one way to do things. And I also think that if you're in those, like, whether it's a world major, or I see this a lot with the Disney runners, that
Sure.
I've worked with is they have these like Facebook groups where they post what
Mhm.
they're doing and they're training along the way. And that's where a lot of that comparison can come into play of like, oh, well, I can see so this person's doing this mileage because they're at this week out, whatever. I don't know. And it's if
Mhm.
that is hard for you and you're seeing that, then just remove yourself from those groups because just keep
Absolutely.
your blinders on, stay focused, stay in your lane, do your thing, trust your coach, trust your training, and don't worry about what other people are doing.
Mhm. Amen, sister.
Mic
On to
drop.
the next. Mic drop. All right, what do we have next?
All right. So the next section we're going to do is comparing your body to others. Now, we also understand that this can be a sensitive topic for a lot of people. So if this is something that you struggle with and you don't want to listen to it, or it's a hard topic to listen to, or even somewhat triggering based on what you're going through, your past experiences, we do encourage you to, if you feel you need to fast forward for the next 5 or 10 minutes to skip this part. But we do understand and recognize this as a very common issue for a lot of runners and just people in general, but we're kind of like just looking at the runners and whatnot right now. But so anyways,
Mhm.
if you want to skip ahead, feel free. But we are going to just kind of chat about our experiences with comparing body composition to others and then some tips that we have for you.
Mhm.
So I guess I can kind of start maybe with some
Okay.
past or current experiences. So this is definitely like I'm going to be fully transparent. Like this is probably the biggest thing that I've ever struggled with in, my life when it comes to comparison of things, like like things that we've talked about with like paces or training or, whatever, like that kind of stuff is not as deep as comparing body image
Mhm.
to others. That's always been something that has been more of the harder one for me to get over. And
Mhm.
I think, being an athlete my whole life, there becomes like a certain body type with that. And that when you feel like you don't live up to what you see as the quote, again, that standard, then you can start to feel like somewhat of an imposter when it comes to that. So I also have struggled because I've had 3 babies. So my body has changed a lot up and down and up and down and up and down over the last 7+ years. So, that has been hard for me because and I would say my part of my struggle would be comparing my own self to myself, like what I looked like before pregnancy or what I looked like before this pregnancy, and like trying to get back to that or whatever. And then there's another side of it where it's a comparison to other people. And so there's kind of like both sides there. But, it is for me personally, like that has been hard to, your body goes through so many changes when you're pregnant and then you have the baby, you get yourself back in shape, and then you have another baby. It's like this, like, it's just a cycle. And it's great. It's beautiful. It's such a beautiful, like, when you take a step back and look big picture, it's a beautiful experience, right? But it can be hard in that sense. So that's been a struggle of mine. And I've worked so hard over the years to kind of get to that point where you're like, I'm okay. Like I'm stronger than I think I am. And I don't know, like this is hard in so many ways, even with like, even nowadays, like I'll catch myself where I'll be like, okay, well, this runner is doing all this strength, and I love strength training. Like I love muscle, like I love muscles. And so I need to lift more because I want my body to look like that as a runner. Like I 100% catch myself doing that. And that is definitely something that I have to catch myself on, and I have to reel myself back and remind myself that I am a strong runner. It doesn't matter what I look like. I am strong. Like all these like different affirmation things that I have to tell myself sometimes. And that I think is like this deep rooted seed that was planted so many years ago when I was like a preteen. And it's funny because I just saw this post that somebody put up about no wonder our generation, like our age, like I'm 34. So however that compares to you with your age and like kind of like what you ingested when you were preteen. Like we didn't have social media then. We didn't have phones and social media during that time, but we did have MTV and we had magazines, I would say, is a big thing. And so and then like your celebrities, like your Britney Spears and your Christina Aguileras, who all had like these tiny, tiny little bodies. And I somebody just posted something. I have no idea
I
who
think
it
I saw
was.
exactly what
And it was
I
like
know.
it was like a magazine
Yep.
cover, and it was like like the, how they put like what's inside the magazine, like different topics and categories and stuff. And oh my gosh, it was things like, oh my God, this celebrity cellulite is like cottage cheese. And it's like how to get rid of your cottage cheese. And it's like, holy crap. Like, I
Even
see
like,
my
yeah.
cellulite is the biggest flaw on my body to this day. I'm being 100% honest. And it is probably because I read magazines like that back in the day, that
Yeah.
is a flaw, and it
The culture
sucks.
like back then was terrible. I think what I saw was probably, it was the same topic but different way of like presenting it in terms of the post, and it was this like similar idea, but it was like interview flashes of like Britney Spears, Christina
Mm-hmm.
Aguilera, and I think it was just about how they're like not Margot Robbie, like
Yeah.
not confident in their body, they don't feel sexy, like, and it's because of like what people are saying about them, and it was so damaging back then. Like, I remember that too. Like, even when I would go to the grocery store with my mom, it's crazy. But when I think of like the magazines that I would see at the grocery store, it
Yeah.
was like the tabloids of them making fun of like a celebrity for like how their body looked.
Yes.
And that was just so ingrained in us, like
Yeah.
as kids, which is like so sad. And I think what's great now is like, there's like a body positivity movement, which is like
Mm-hmm.
wonderful. It doesn't mean that people still don't struggle with it, but it was like real shit like
Yeah.
back in the day.
It did
Yeah.
damage to me. Like, if I'm being totally
Yeah,
honest, like that kind of stuff.
totally.
And
Yeah.
again, I was ingesting it. Whether you're
Yeah.
ingesting social media nowadays is what the norm is, or magazines in the grocery line, or whatever it is, what you ingest matters. And that stuff did damage to me back then, and it is still.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 34 now, and that kind of stuff still pops up in my mind when I see cellulite on my legs or whatever, and I'm like, oh well, I need to, like, whatever. Like, whatever narrative I want to tell myself, like, that still comes up in my mind. Like, and so
Mm-hmm.
I do appreciate the accounts that I'll see sometimes where they post like the side by side photos of like perfect lighting, perfect body, whatever you want to
Mm-hmm.
call it. And then the side
Yeah.
by side is where like they smush their body, or they like sit differently. Honestly, it's truly just like
Or just like
different
probably let their
lighting.
stomach relax.
Yes.
Like,
Or like
yeah.
they're not arched back and posed butt, and it's like they're just
Yeah.
relaxed. And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden they look more, quote, normal, or
Yeah.
maybe more like yourself. And you're like,
Yep.
whoa, like they aren't perfect. That's very
Mm-hmm.
similar to what my body might look like, if I
Mm-hmm.
catch it in the mirror or something. And some of them, the ones that have good intention, I think, can really bring you back to. I actually saw this runner girl do it, and I literally, again, I feel like we're being very transparent in this podcast, but
I
like
know. It's good though.
that one like brought tears to my eyes. I think I saved it, but it was a side by side of a runner who freaking looks badass. The girl is jacked. She is muscular. She is so fit and fast, and just like her body is just like chiseled. And it was a running still frame, looking just like airbrushed. And then a second one next to it was a same running but a different still frame, and you could see like just like what some people might say as like cellulite, or like flabbier
Yeah.
skin, or just not airbrushed chiseled look. And I was like, it brought tears to my eyes, because I was like, oh my gosh, here I am thinking this person is just like, I don't know, picture
Like a
perfect.
walking like robot, like
Right.
just
Like no
looks all the time.
flaw in my
Yeah. Like there's
head.
no,
Again,
yeah.
whatever you want to call it. They're not flaws. I know.
It's
That's
not,
like a
it's just
narrative that you got to
normal.
rework, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's just
And
normal.
I
It's
was
just
like,
like
wow,
normal
she's
body movement.
normal. She has the same
Yeah.
kinds of things that I do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yet I sit here and that's the only thing that I see sometimes. And like,
Mm-hmm.
I need to like stop doing that. So yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it's definitely like something that is a constant. And that's why sometimes I get so afraid to like raise a girl in this world, is just like, my mom had never talked about that kind of stuff with me. We never had those conversations. So
Yeah.
I can't, go through the grocery line and be like, don't look, and like shield all the magazines,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But what I can do is instill that importance of self-worth, and like, hey, we
Mm-hmm.
need to accept our bodies how they are, and we need to take care of our bodies, and we need to love our bodies no matter what they look like. And that this idea of perfection is not a reality.
Yeah.
And it's this made up thing, and, all this kind of stuff. So like, it actually
Yeah.
has kind of helped me see how I need to take a lot of what I've struggled with my whole life and put it into my daughter, so that she can be stronger than I am at 34 years old when it comes to this kind of stuff. So,
Yeah, no, thank you so much for sharing that and like opening up. Again, we are being very transparent and honest, but I think that some of this stuff and like what I'm about to even share, like I have not shared on social media. I haven't really like talked about it much outside of like my husband and stuff, but like yeah, it's hard. Like I have a hard time talking about this type of thing just because, you know, you don't want to be triggering to anyone. You don't want like but at the same time it's something that I have had conversations with athletes like with where maybe even and it's a healthy goal that they have but where they've like trained for a race and now they have like personal aesthetic goals and we've had conversations on how to healthily like navigate that but yeah I like what's interesting is like this past year is the most I've struggled with my body image which is like crazy. I never really like thought about it like very much but it was coming off of my marathon training cycle like last year going into that summer like I just noticed like some body changes like not anything crazy drastic but things in certain like areas that didn't used to like be there and like clothes were starting to fit differently even with like making efforts to like continue to like eat well and all that stuff and I never like track I eat like a really balanced like a balanced diet and I feel like I treat myself when I want to. So like I've always had a healthy relationship with food, but that's where I struggled with where it's like, oh, like I don't want to have to worry about that. Like I feel like I'm doing things right, but why are things different? And I actually broke down to my husband the one night because we went to the mall because I was like, I want to I needed more jeans. Like I think I was just like getting rid of ones that I was like sick of. And I was like, I want to get a couple pairs of jeans. And when I went jean shopping, it was like terrible. And I like came like when we got back, we were eating dinner and I was quiet and I just started like crying. And he was like, oh my gosh, what's wrong? And I was like, I had to like I went up like a jean size, not because it's like I've been like lifting, so like my legs have like gotten bigger. I've gone through that like in college with soccer. Like we would always joke like these are my in season jeans and these are my off season jeans because we did so much lifting in the off season. Like I always had like a healthy like relationship and like vision like of my body, but this was just like different where it's like no, things aren't like fitting like in this way and like when I'm putting certain things on like I'm not feeling confident and like I hadn't like navigated that before and it was just really hard and then I was comparing myself to like other people on social media and I ended up like to again it's like something that I'm still kind of like working through because the thing that I have had to like continue to bring myself back to is how I'm feeling on my runs. And I like at the time, like I even before this ankle stuff popped up, like I still would feel self-conscious sometimes, like when I'm like doing some stuff on social media and I just notice it, like I just noticed stuff again. And I saw
Mhm.
this one reel one time that it would like hit home for me, where it was like the thing that you like the one thing about your body that you maybe are like really critical of yourself about somebody else doesn't even notice it probably like at all
Yeah.
and so but like we hyper focus on those things we're always our own worst critics right so I always try to like remind myself of that and then also knowing that I'm in this place where I'm not totally confident in my body like at the moment but I was running like my fastest workouts like I was throwing down like crazy like workouts and
Right.
that was the one thing that I would try to kind of like ground myself again is like I have like I have a healthy relationship with food. I have like there's so many good things going on in my life. My running is like doing amazing. Again, before the ankle thing popped up, but it was like I was feeling so good in my training, running the fastest like workouts like I've ever done. Very confident going into like upcoming races to the PR and everything. And like, isn't that what matters? Is
Right.
like how you feel? Like how you
Yeah.
feel is like what
That's
matters.
what
And
should matters, but
it's
it's
what should
yeah.
matter. Yeah. But it, and again, so
Mhm.
still like a work in progress, but like that's been a like really hard to kind of like navigate. But one thing I actually talked to Carly, my coach, about it because it was after the marathon. We were just like catching up and like talking. And I was like, I don't know, like I'm really struggling with it and like she gave me really good advice cuz she was like had just had her baby like not long ago, maybe like months prior and she's like, yeah, like she was like kind of navigating like where things are like different like you had said, you know, after like having kids and your body changes and she was like, I bought new clothes. And I was like, fuck yeah, like I'm going to go buy new clothes. So that was something else too, is that I went through my closet. I got rid of all of the things, even if it was some stuff I really liked, like I got rid of everything that didn't make me feel good about myself when it was on, like when I put it on. So like shirts, pants, like shorts, like all that stuff, even running shorts, like I donated or I sold on Poshmark, and I got like new things. Kind of a funny thing to make this light. When I did that, I was like full purge mode, like hardcore Marie Kondo, blinders on. Will came home and he was like, "Are you leaving me?" Because like my closet was so bare. And I was like, no. Like, he was like, "I'm joking," but I'm like actually a little serious. He's like, and I was like, "No, I'm cleaning the closet. I'm getting new stuff that makes me feel good." And like honestly, that was really helpful, even with running things. Like I got new shorts that like made me feel good about myself to wear on. So yeah. But
no, I like
let's
that.
get into I know that there
I have a
some,
couple
like,
tips, and
Yeah.
then we can kind of close out the last one kind of quickly, I think.
Yeah.
So a couple tips if this is something that you're struggling with. One of the things that I really like to do is the power of the way you talk to yourself is it's incredibly moving, and it can make a lot of differences. So if you're constantly looking in the mirror, seeing what you think is a flaw and acknowledging it as such, then you will continue to think that. If you start to
Mhm.
look into the mirror and see what you used to consider a flaw and start to rewrite that a little bit and to start to rewire your brain, it can be incredibly powerful, and then your whole thought process will start to change. So for example, looking at yourself in the mirror, like actually making eye contact with yourself and saying positive affirmations. Again, I think using the you word is another instance where this is really powerful. I know we had talked about that, you statements over I statements, when it comes to like when you're in the midst of like a hard workout. But even looking in the mirror and being like, you are strong, you are beautiful, you are fierce, all that, whatever it is maybe that you're struggling with, and then rewriting those doubts into truths. And I feel like we just sent out an email about this. If not, it's coming up, about rewriting your doubts into a truth. So for example, if say you think I don't have a runner's body, that's usually a common one.
Mhm.
And every time you look in the mirror, you see a running picture, maybe a race photo, and you're like, oh, I don't have a runner's body. That's a lie you're telling to yourself. So you need to
Mhm.
rewrite that. So every time that doubt pops into your head, you have a rebuttal for it. So for example, you could rewrite that and say something like, um, I have strong legs that carry me the distance of a marathon, or
Mhm.
whatever it is.
Mhm.
My body is strong enough to run 13 miles. And so every time that doubt pops in, you have a rebuttal for it, and you start to rewrite that, and you start to tell your brain more about the truth, not the lie. And you'll start to notice that that doubt will start popping up less, and the truth will start popping up more. And so that's what we want, right? We want to be able to reframe our brain into stop believing these lies about yourself and start seeing the truth. So, anyways, I think then the last tip, and I've already said this a couple of times, but I really think that this is like a root of a lot of this, is to really be mindful of what you're ingesting and allowing yourself to see. Again, that goes
Mhm.
back to the tips that we've already talked about, which is removing those from your feed or whatever it is, but you need to be mindful of what you're ingesting, because it's it really is important. So,
Yeah.
anyways,
And
yeah.
just know at the end of the day, like no matter what your shape, what your size, anything like that. And again, like we're all human, right? So when Christine and I share our struggles, like we want you to know that if you're experiencing these thoughts, like you're not alone in those thoughts, but also we want you to know if you really struggle with this on a deep level and feel like you don't belong because of maybe how you look, that is not the case. Us as coaches can attest, like anytime I'm out running and I like, you see all different, again, like shapes, sizes, ethnicities, backgrounds, all that stuff. It's like, I don't look at anybody as different. Like, I don't see how someone looks and I'm like, oh, like, are they a real runner? Like, fuck
Right.
not. Like, no, absolutely not. Like, I get inspired by seeing like so many different like types of human beings that are out there putting one foot in front of the other. So like, yeah, I just want you to know that like, I, I just want you to know that one, that this is a safe space, like for you guys who are listening, that two, like you're always going to be like welcomed by like us in the Relentless Runners community, whether you are just like a listener, you follow us on social media, you're an athlete of ours, and there is never going to be any judgment. And a lot of times, again, like we are our own worst critic when it comes to that, but
Yeah.
we
And
love you
before we
guys.
move on to the next thing, yeah, no, I'm glad you said that. And I think you made this point before, but I just want to drive it home because I have to remind myself of it sometimes too, is what you see is not what others see.
Yeah.
And I have to remind myself of that. I've a couple of years ago, I put a post on my Instagram, and it was the same photo side by side, and the title on one side was "What I See," and it was something like cellulite, double chin. I don't know. It was like all these like ridiculous things, like poor arm swing, or like all these things that I was nitpicking. And then on the other side of the picture was the exact same photo, and it was what others see. And these are things that like people were saying to me. And so that's kind of like what sparked this post that I did, was people were saying things like, "Oh my God, I love your hair," or "Oh my God, your shoulder." Like, I've had this one woman come up to me in a park one time and be like, "Oh my God, your shoulders are amazing." And it was like, what? Like, what are you what are you talking about? And it was like, that's what she saw though. And so it was like things like that, like flowy hair, or like strong form, or defined arms. And it was like, that's what other people saw compared to what I saw. That post was probably one of the most saved posts and reshared posts I have ever done, because I think it resonated so much with other people to show that what you see about yourself is not the same thing as what other people see. And that those go back to those doubts and those lies that we tell ourselves, and how we need to start rewiring our brain to see the truth. And just the way we talk to ourselves matters. So
Yeah.
just to kind of close that one out. Yeah.
I love that. I think that was one of my favorite parts of this whole like podcast episode. But we're going to close out this last one. I'm just going to kind of breeze through everything, and Christine, you just chime in if there's anything else that you'd like to add. So the last thing we're going to talk about is just comparing the things that you have to others. So again, social media, it's a blessing and a curse sometimes, but it really can make you feel like you need the latest and greatest, newest everything. And there's something that we want to remind you of that you may not even realize. Christine and I know this because we're kind of like in this space a little bit. But a lot of influencers in the running space get free new shoes, new gear all the time, meaning they're not paying for it. So sometimes like these, and again, just because if someone's a running influencer, it doesn't deem them as like bad or anything like that. They could be like amazing human beings, but you do see like constant new gear, like hauls of like all this stuff from like these different, I don't know, insert like store here. But and me and Christine and I can attest, like we've gotten like free stuff, like new watches, everything under the sun that you can think of, but they're not paying for it. Like when that happens, they're getting sent that gear. And so I know that sometimes like it can kind of put this pressure when you constantly see even posts of people wearing like the new latest and greatest of like what these different companies are coming out with. It's because they may have access to that. And that may not be the case. Like sometimes they, financially, they're buying all that stuff too. But I just want to paint that picture that again, like what you see is not always the reality that you may realize. And I think people don't always understand like that side of like social media. So I just wanted to say that. And the other thing I wanted to say too is that there are so many great dupes out there. So if you do want something like, if you want something that's like a trend, I know. And we're going to get into that because like that looks so like they look identical to the popular item. Christine, I have seen, and people ask you all the time, like they're asking about what you're wearing. And you have like Amazon dupes of like the energy bra, the fast and free split shorts. Like
I have them on right now.
Yeah. Like and so many people are like, even there's a lot of Lululemon dupes, but something like that. I even have like, it's not running, but like I have a Free People dupe from like one of their like popular jackets. It's like a quilted like jacket. I have one like from Amazon too. And so there's things that you can do to like get access to the style, and it still looks great and it serves a purpose and it gets the job done with running. But it's not like you're not spending all the money on the name brand, if that makes sense. And the other thing I was telling Christine about too before we got on this call, because we were like talking about something, but I was telling her about Brittany, our other running coach. We were both on Poshmark, and I saw this because I was looking for Tracksmith and Bandit stuff. I've gotten stuff from like both of those companies on Poshmark, but I was looking and I saw Brittany. I just see like Be Baddest, and I was like, wait a second, I know that name. And she's like asking questions like on this one Tracksmith bra, and I was like, I texted her, I'm like, girl, it was like 2 minutes ago too, and I was like, girl, try to steal stuff that I'm looking at too. But You can look at Poshmark and other apps to get lightly used or even used stuff that you can wash, that it's like, again, you get the nice stuff like at a discount too. So, at the end of the day, like, I just want to put out there that you don't need the latest and greatest things to be happy, to be a real runner. You don't need to wear X, Y, and Z brand in order to be a legit runner. If you want to invest in those things, absolutely do it. Like I have with that stuff, as well, but you don't need it. And there's so many other options out there, and people don't you're not gonna be judged because of what you're wearing and what it is. So,
Yeah.
Christine, anything to add with that topic before
No,
we close it out?
I think it's important. And that kind of just goes to all the things you see people not just buying things, but going and doing things like red light therapy or going to cryotherapy or going and doing all of these things that they might make a difference, but you don't have to be doing these. I remember thinking that back in it was 2019 or something about cryotherapy. I was like, oh my God, everyone's doing cryotherapy. I need to go find a cryotherapy place and do these after my long runs. And I did. And I was like, I'd rather just go home and take an ice bath than go to cryotherapy, to be totally honest. But it was I remember falling into that, being like, oh, well, these running influencers they're promoting these places. And then it made me think oh, well, I need to be adding these in. And everything has a place, and there might be benefits to a lot of the different stuff, like the Normatec compression boots. I know we both have them, and I love my boots. But that is not a necessity. There's a lot of different things that you can have, and there's a lot of influencers that put it out there.
And again, I was given my boots. My boots were free.
Yeah. I had to buy my boots, but
yeah. No, but again, I know and again, what I want to say too is I know that you're this way and I know that I'm this way. When we are the type of people, because we do work with brands, when we work with a brand, it's a brand that we like.
Oh yeah.
And we're never Christine and I are both the type of people that we are not going to preach something. And I know you've turned people down or companies down. I know I've done the same thing. We are not going to endorse or stand by a company if we're not an actual fan of them. And I think it's because we have an understanding that it doesn't matter how many followers you have. If you're someone that is sharing your standpoint on training or running or advice or tips, you are an influencer in the space.
Sure.
And so because we understand from working with athletes and stuff, how people's opinions can have impact on what they do and implement in their own training or lives, we share things with we want to make sure that we're doing it the right way. So I just wanted to say that too.
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't need all the fancy things. So, but we're going to close it out there because we've been talking for almost 90 minutes. This is probably our longest episode.
Yeah.
But it was a really good one. And I'm glad that we were able to cover these topics. I can't remember who submitted this idea, but thank you so much, because I think that this is going to be, I hope that it is received well. I hope that we gave you tips that you feel really good about. I hope that you feel less alone if you're someone who has navigated these struggles. Again, let us know if you have any other ideas. You can follow us each on our social media pages, which Christine will link everything below. You can follow us at on Instagram and TikTok at Relentless Runners. If you want to learn a little bit more about us too, and what we do for coaching, you can learn more at relentlessrunners.com. And we can't wait to see you guys